1 week season.
What is going on, OWS fam, DFS fam? Welcome to the DFS Lab. This is episode number 2 of the Week 16 NFL season 2022. I am your host, JM to Win from oneweekseason.com, here with my man, KTM128. Keegan, how are you doing?
I'm ready to get it. How are you?
You're ready to get it. So we got, by the way, if you're watching this, throw it on 1.75x speed. That's my recommendation. I did that last night watching our yesterday's show back. I thought that was a good speed to listen to this app. I get the whole thing in under 20 minutes. So Keegan, now that this slate has developed a little bit more, we've had an extra day to think about things. One of the things I'm realizing is that whether or not you play Derrick Henry is a pretty key decision point on this slate. And what I mean by that is it's kind of the first decision you have to make, recognizing that he's probably going to be like 40% owned, recognizing that a fail game from him is still probably well over 20 points. Now it looks like Ryan Tannehill won't be starting this week. I don't know if you saw that, but some interesting numbers. We think of Derrick Henry as being this yardage and touchdown back, but he's gotten more involved in the passing attack. His last 6 games, he's averaged 6.65 points through the air, which is basically like adding another touchdown to his score. So if he rushes for 150, gets the 100-yard bonus, gets 2 rushing touchdowns, that's 30 points, and then he adds 6 points through the air. Great, right? But in Malik Willis's 2 starts, Malik Willis threw 26 passes across 2 starts. Derrick Henry averaged 0.95 points through the air. So totally yardage and touchdown back with Malik Willis under center. Although one of those games was against Houston, and Derrick Henry rushed 32 times for 219 yards and 2 touchdowns. So we also know that the entire offense is going to be Derrick Henry. The Texans know that as well. So I don't think there's a wrong answer here. It's just laying out that foundation of like, that's the first decision point on any roster is, do you play Derrick Henry or not? So for this build today, I'm going to throw that over to you. What do we want to do? Do we want to play Derrick Henry on this roster or skip him?
Let's skip him. Let's fade him.
Yep. All right. So then the next question for me would become, do we go Christian McCaffrey and spend another guy in that same price range and try to outscore all the Derrick Henry rosters? Or do we just do like a totally different salary structure than everybody else with Derrick Henry is going to have?
I say we do a totally different salary structure because, I mean, I like that you said that 40% of the field is going to be playing Derrick Henry, and on the off chance that he does have a bad game, I mean, this could blow up for us and put us to the top.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that and obviously it's Wednesday, right? So we don't know for sure on ownership. We'll have a better sense tomorrow morning. We'll have a really good sense on Friday for our Friday show. But one could assume that in this spot that Derrick Henry will see at least 40% ownership. That's what typically happens against Houston already. And then we've seen Houston's played really well on defense against Dallas. They've played really well on defense against Kansas City. They're going to know with 100% certainty that this entire offense is going to flow through Derrick Henry. So it doesn't mean that they have the pieces to stop him, but it does mean that we could see one of these spots where like his first 15 carries go for only 40 yards, right? Where they just sell it to try to stop Derrick Henry. And maybe by that 20th carry, he starts breaking through for some long runs. But if it doesn't happen, or if he just doesn't get the touchdowns, right? Even 120 yards and 1 touchdown, that's 21 points. We can kind of soar past the field there. I think that the story on Christian McCaffrey, disappointing, isn't probably him like having a 14-point game, right? But if the 49ers just completely destroy Washington here, he's going to be off the field for the 4th quarter. If he doesn't score the touchdowns, he could end up with like 25, 28 points. Great score for the people who roster him, but at 8,800 doesn't kill us to move away from him.
Right.
I also think that with McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, a lot of people won't be on Justin Jefferson this week, or not as much as we would expect because it's hard to get that salary over there as well. So this will open things up for us here. So if we're going in a different direction, let's skip over Kamara, who we used yesterday. Interestingly, that game, both teams are implied to score under 17 points right now, I think it is. Like it's one of the lowest over-unders we've seen in years. So if we steer clear of that Kamara one and say, all right, we played him on a roster yesterday, let's find 2 backs below that Kamara price range. I think there's a lot of options this week down here. So anybody catching your eye below 6,800 this week?
Below 68. I mean, we could go Swift, like you were saying yesterday.
100%. I'm 100% on board with Swift. I mean, we recognize that carries don't matter as much as targets, right? Because every target can turn into a catch, which is a full point. Carries, you're expecting like over time, 5 yards per carry. You're expecting like half of a point per carry. So last week he saw 9 targets. In week 13, he saw 6 targets. The week before that, he saw 8 targets. So DeAndre Swift certainly could come out and have an 8 to 9 target game, add 6 or 7 carries, maybe even 10 carries in this spot. Could easily put up 20 to even 25, even 30 points. We've seen him do it on this type of workload. So yeah. Oh, I don't even have your screen pulled up here. So let's go ahead and start out by adding DeAndre Swift. We don't have to choose the second running back yet. We can move a different direction. But I do think that if we're going off of Henry and Christian McCaffrey, it's interesting to try to say, let's just go cheaper at running back and do something totally different than the field. We'll be able to maybe get 2 high-priced wide receivers on this roster. Keegan, what do you want to do next? Do you want to go to a second running back? Do you want to move over to our quarterback and our pass catchers? You want to throw in like a defense and tight end to get a sense of salary? Where are we going next?
So if we're like kind of fading Derrick Henry here, what if, it's a long shot, but what if they just, completely shut down the run game in Houston? And then we can go maybe a pass catcher, maybe say the second half, they really just start trying to throw the ball. I guess that's not really.
Yeah. I think that if we're playing the Millie Maker, that's a bet that I might make, right? Where you're saying like, what is something that you got to beat 200,000 rosters. You have to finish in first place, but just knowing this offense, the chances of, or I guess we could build a bet around it, right? It would have to be like, you'd play multiple Houston pass catchers and say Houston jumps out to a big lead. Because as long as this game's within, like, even if Houston's up 10 points in the second half, Mike Vrabel is just going to keep running that ball. And so especially with Malik Willis under center, if that's what we're assuming right now, hard for me to see anybody getting enough volume to really be a tournament winner on the Titans. We could go with the Texans defense. That's like an interesting way to play it and say maybe they force some turnovers, shut down Derrick Henry, force some turnovers. Texans defense is only 2,500. That's an interesting way to leverage the fact that we're not playing Derrick Henry. They forced 19 turnovers this year. That's pretty solid, right? The Eagles have forced like 24 turnovers. So the Texans are right behind these top teams. 31 sacks, which is not elite, but that's kind of middle of the pack. I think the Broncos have like 36 sacks or something like that. So Texans are a solid defense that people kind of overlook. So I think that's an interesting way to go if we're not playing Derrick Henry. But we're also like, our main leverage here, in my opinion, is that we're just getting this. We're going to do a totally different salary structure where a lot of people might have 1 or 2 high-priced backs. We can have 2 or 3 high-priced wide receivers. So certainly like that's our clearest leverage. But yeah, I don't think that we need to do anything else there in terms of pass catchers.
Okay. Well, in that case, let's start with quarterback and do some pass catches with that. Try to stack them.
I like it. Any quarterbacks you've been seeing this week that are kind of catching your eye?
You mentioned Cousins, or you mentioned Jefferson, and so I kind of would, if we pulled Jefferson on this lineup here, I'd like to.
I like that. Nobody plays Cousins ever, and we talked about it earlier in the year, like where he had all these games of like 22 points, 24 points, like no blow up games, but like 299 passing yards. So 1 yard shy of the bonus, another one with 296, 4 yards shy of the bonus, a 3 touchdown game with 299 yards. So yeah, I think that we saw last week against Indy, obviously they were in massive comeback mode, but his ceiling is higher than what he's shown. I think it's certainly possible for him to put up 27, 28 points just in like a solid game between these two, pair him with Jefferson and get all those points there. So yeah, I like that. I like that call. One thing I would say is, in order for Cousins to put up like a tourney winner, we might need the Giants to be scoring points. And if we're not going to play, if we're going to say that we're going to go this lower cost running back route, that saves us some salary at wide receiver because we can go Isaiah Hodgins or we can go Darius Slayton. But I do think that we want to play one of those guys on a Cousins roster. Any thoughts on that? Does that take you off of Cousins, or is there one of those guys that you would be willing to take a swing on?
Slayton actually helped me win some money a few weeks ago, like 5 or 6 weeks ago. So I'm okay with doing that.
I like it. And Hodgins, He put up 15.4 in week 13, 15.8 in week 14, but both of those came with a touchdown. And so that kind of like artificially elevates his price a little bit, where if we don't get that touchdown, we're not getting those points. I actually like either of these guys, but Slayton is like a true alpha in this offense. And now we've got, if we assume that we're going to go with another low cost running back, man, we have this is just an entirely different build than anyone else is going to have in terms of a Cousins and Jefferson stack with a Darius Slayton bring back, and then these cheap running backs. And we're probably going to be able to find a way to get in another high-priced wide receiver as well. At this point, we've got a few places where we can save salary to get a sense of things. So what are you thinking? Do we want to go that second running back now, go tight end, go defense? Where are you looking here?
What do you think about, like, instead of doing another high-priced wide receiver, what do you think about, like, Saquon is like really just leveraging our bet here and saying that this game is going to blow up, and we have Saquon and Slayton scoring touchdowns, and then on the other side we have Cousins throwing touchdowns to JJ, just back and forth touchdowns all day? What do you think?
Yeah, I like it, the bet in theory, but if we go through New York's game logs, they scored 20 points last week, 22 the week before, 20 the week before, 20 the week before, 18 the week before, 24 the week before, 13 the week before. It's so hard for this whole offense, this whole team, I should say, is built around this concept of let's keep the game close. Let's prevent teams from, because they don't have a good defense, but they have a really good red zone defense. So it's like, let's prevent teams from scoring in the red zone, keep the game kind of low scoring. We don't have an explosive offense, but if we can keep things tight and kind of lower scoring, then we're in good shape. So we're betting on like a massive outlier in order for, like, Saquon's best game of the season was week 1, 36 points. His second best game was against Houston in week 10, 26 points, which still makes him overpriced. Every other game has been 23 points or below.
Yeah.
So we would need like a really wacky game environment here, which again, I'm always comfortable betting on wacky game environments, but like in the tournaments that we're talking about, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000 entries, not a direction that I want to go.
Okay, cool. And I mean, like, it's kind of crazy how some of these top guys are priced more so on their floor than their ceiling.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because like obviously McCaffrey can put up 40, but his likeliest game is going to be like 26, 27 points, which is 3x his salary. Derrick Henry, if he gets another 220 rushing yards, we don't have him, whatever. Like, we'll have him on some other rosters. But yeah, and it's like if he instead puts up one of these 23, 24 point games, Texans sell it to stop him. You know, the Titans score 2 touchdowns and only one of those comes through Derrick Henry. We're in really good shape here because, yeah, people got scores that they're happy with, but like for the salary spent, we can certainly beat those scores. And yeah, and I kind of think same thing with Saquon, right? Like one game all season over 26 points, and yet he's priced about 8K. Nick Chubb has 3 games in his career north of 33 points. He's priced at 7,700. Dalvin Cook can put up 30 plus points, but not on this roster where we've got Cousins and Jefferson hitting. So yeah, I mean, like we almost are saying like, hey, we're going to get better value from these cheaper running backs anyway on this type of build. I wouldn't mind throwing in like a Jerick McKinnon on this roster.
I love it.
Who certainly, as we've seen, can hit for a big game. Or we can get like a little bit more funky and go with like a James Cook or somebody else a little bit cheaper than that.
I like McKinnon. And last week I made the mistake of being on Pacheco instead of McKinnon, and kind of bit me in the butt there. Yeah,
I made the mistake of like being really proud of the fact that I was fading Pacheco and then still didn't have any McKinnon. So I was like, oh man, nobody's getting these Pacheco points. And then I look over and McKinnon scoring 30 plus again.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like once we throw in a defense here, and I actually like the idea of let's throw in that Texans defense and just kind of see, because the cheap defense we're playing off of this Derrick Henry bet. So 5,100, not as much as I was thinking, but I think we'll still be able to, if we go cheaper at tight end, we'll still be able to get to another high-priced wide receiver, whether that's like Amon-Ra St. Brown or DK Metcalf, or actually, you know what I was going to say? I kind of think that we should have a 1 Seahawks per roster rule this week.
I love it.
Because we just know for a fact that they're going to be throwing the ball. They don't have Tyler Lockett. Marquise Goodwin is going to be cheap. He's going to probably get 7 targets this week. Maybe it's more like 5 targets, but he can get as many as 8 or 9 targets filling in for Tyler Lockett. He's 4,300. We already talked about, and you know, I don't know how much you know about Marquise Goodwin, but he's an Olympic sprinter. Like left football for a year to do or 2 years, whatever it was, like prep for the Olympics. Like this dude has Olympic level speed. And that's kind of how he has this, 20 pointer in week 14. He has a 22 pointer in week 7. I think the week 7 game, I think DK Metcalf got hurt in that game. He went 4 for 67 and 2 touchdowns. So 4,300 on Marquise Goodwin or Noah Fant. We already talked about him as well as a guy who's going to see a lot of targets. But I'm kind of looking at this as like, hey, concentrated offense, capable of scoring points, going to be chasing points against Kansas City. I might legitimately have one Seahawk per every roster type rule this week. And then again, we open up the salary a little bit more where now once we fit in a tight end, we'll probably have enough left over to get to Jamar Chase or AJ Brown or Amon-Ra St. Brown or really whoever we want up here at the top.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I like Goodwin a lot. I played him on one of those 20-point weeks. Who was it? Maybe Lockett was out or was it DK? One of those two was out and his targets jumped up.
Yeah. And then they're going to have to be throwing the ball, you'd think, in this spot eventually. And so we're kind of in an interesting spot, too, where the salary boxes us in to where I don't know that we necessarily want to take tight end next because we want to choose which high-priced wide receiver we want. And then, we don't want tight end to box in our wide receiver choice so much as we want our wide receiver choice to box in our tight end choice. So we're kind of working differently here where usually you and I are going tight end a little bit earlier. But on this one, if we take Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're going to have 3,200 left over, and then we can just see what that gives us at tight end. Or if we go below Amon-Ra St. Brown, then we have a little bit more flexibility.
Okay. At the very top, the only person that I really like up here is probably St. Brown. Jamar Chase, but like you said, I don't. There's two defenses that I don't like playing against, and that's the Patriots and the Cowboys. So
and with the Patriots too, I went through their game logs last week before they played Devontae Adams, and they had all these games where they'd given up 20-point scores to elite wide receivers. As in they're not totally shutting these guys down like the Jets do, but also they're not giving up 35 pointers. The chances of Jamar Chase and going for 35 are pretty low in this spot. And then once we get below Amon-Ra St. Brown, we're in a totally different category of wide receiver too, right? Even DK Metcalf has one game this year north of 22 points. Obviously, we expect him to see the targets this week. We expect him to be passing, but below Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's a completely different category of wide receiver where we've got some big games from CeeDee Lamb or one big game from CeeDee Lamb, but really tough matchup. And typically he scores about 22 points. DK Metcalf, same thing, one nice game. And then you get the T. Higgins, the Devontae Smiths, the Brandon Ayuk's who are kind of up and down, have a harder shot at 30 points. So Amon-Ra St. Brown's kind of the bottom of that top tier. We get him and we've got a 30-point. I guess we do have Swift on this roster. So that's something to think about here a little bit. I don't love that. Is there another running back? Is there another running back that we would be interested in? Because if we've got Cousins instead of Goff, we could pivot down to Goff again on this roster. But if we've got Cousins instead of Goff, it seems a little bit silly to throw in 2 Lions and then not take Goff.
Let's do it then. Let's just do another Goff build.
Another Goff roster. Yeah, I'm down with that. Honestly, and I like I said, I like this spot a lot. Maybe we'll force ourselves to do a non-Goff roster tomorrow, but Jefferson can hit without Cousins. We still have the Slayton bring back, which I really like on that Jefferson build. And now we're gonna have a little bit more salary to work with at tight end as well. We could even go Noah Fant and have another one of these double Seahawks type builds, or they're actually 4,100. We have a little bit more flexibility even than that. So, Dawson Knox is 4,100, and then when we get below him, we've got Juwan Johnson in a spot where New Orleans is probably keeping the ball on the ground. We've got Chigo Okonkwo where we know Tennessee is going to keep the ball on the ground, and then we've got Noah Fant. So we could either go Knox or we could go down to Fant and then spend some extra salary somewhere else.
We already have a Seahawks player.
But we did it yesterday. I don't mind these double Seahawks player bets this week. I just think that they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. It's really concentrated. I think 7,700 we'd spend between the two of them. That's less than Amon-Ra St. Brown. They'll have similar targets, similar upside from that salary spent.
So is Fant gonna play though?
What's the deal? Did he miss practice or something?
Yeah, he missed practice Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm not concerned if he ends up missing though. Then we just pivot down to Will Dissly, right? That concentrates this offense even more. But yeah, I would assume a lot of players sat out yesterday on these Tuesday walkthroughs on the short week. But I would assume that he plays. But yeah, if not, there's certainly we're low enough that there's other places that we can go. It opens up the Will Dissly play if he's out. Will Dissly's only 2,700. And honestly, like I said, too, we could just go Will Dissly because we know that they're going to run a lot more 2 tight end sets without Tyler Lockett. Opens up the chances of Will Dissly seeing 3 or 4 targets. He's got 3 touchdowns on the year. They all came early in the year, but this is a guy who has multi-touchdown games on his resume. He can put up 10 plus points. So I think he's interesting, but yeah, I think that Fant has legitimate upside if he's out there this week.
Okay. Let's do Fant, assuming that let's assume he's playing.
And then we're going to have 700. So we don't necessarily need, exactly. We don't necessarily need to bet on the Texans defense as part of our non-Derrick Henry bet. But yeah, now we've got a little bit of extra salary to work with here at defense.
Yeah, I'm looking and I don't really.
We've got 32. The Ravens at home against a rookie 3rd round. Ravens 42 sacks on the year. That's right up near the top of the NFL. 23 turnovers forced, right up near the top of the NFL. Only 1 defense special teams touchdown, so they don't have as many blow up defense special teams games. But looks like their worst game on the entire season was 5 defense special teams points. A lot of double-digit games, a lot of games up in that 8 to 9 point range, or I guess in this 10 to 12 point range. And then playing Desmond Ridder, who again is not a highly regarded prospect, 3rd round rookie quarterback in his 2nd start. Low total game. I think that's a sharp defense to go to.
I love that. That's a sneaky pick. I wasn't even paying attention to the Ravens. I don't.
Yeah, and they kind of seem to be buried this year, maybe because of the disappointment around the team as a whole. But people don't really think about the Ravens as much. And as we've talked about, people stop at the cheapest defense that they feel comfortable with. So I think people will kind of stop at whether it's the Patriots or the Chiefs or maybe the Texans with Malik Willis under center. There's a lot of different places to stop before you get to the Ravens, and a lot of upside there. This is a very, very similar build to what we had yesterday with Jared Goff with a bet on the Lions offense with two Seattle players. But I also think Seattle is one of the central bets I'll be placing this week. I like the Lions a lot this week. Maybe tomorrow we'll force ourselves to do something different. But what I like about this is that we have a totally different salary structure. If everybody's on Derrick Henry and then saying, well, if I'm not playing Derrick Henry, I want to play Christian McCaffrey, or I want to be sneaky and try to play them together, we end up instead with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson, which is just a pairing that most people won't have. And then if people are thinking this way, a lot of times they're not going to play the Darius Slayton at 5,100, right? Or 5,200. They're going to say, well, how do I get down to a cheaper wideout and open up a little bit more upside somewhere else? So yeah, it's definitely a very unique build to where if pieces of this are hitting, we're jumping over large chunks of the field, even if there's some high individual ownership on these guys. And like you said, right, if Derrick Henry misses, that's 40% of the field that we're already ahead of here. If Derrick Henry goes for 21 points and Justin Jefferson goes for 35 or 40, we're so far ahead of those Derrick Henry rosters. And then we've got some different things than the other Justin Jefferson rosters will have. So yeah, I really like this one a lot. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I like this lineup, and
all right. As always, thanks for hanging out with us. We will see you on 1 week season throughout the week. We will see you back here on Thursday afternoon for another edition of the DFS Lab, and we will see you at the top of the leaderboards this weekend.